Hey everyone, Works here. So we're back with Monk Academy 202 Mistweaver talents. So today we're going to be talking about the Mistweaver Monk talent tree. We'll go do a little bit of a quicker run through of the class tree than we did in the Brewmaster video, but then also going through the Mistweaver tree. Now this is another video in the long series that I'm doing of the Mistweaver Academy series. Apologies for how loud my chair is. But basically what's going on in this series is I'm doing 3 videos on each spec, and I'm kind of breaking this down into a little bit more of granular detail. But we do a first video on spells and abilities, a second video on the talent tree, third on like rotation or healing priority, coupled with a kind of like set of tips and tricks that I've learned over time here. So apologies for that. Just realized I had a wrong piece of gear. I got to update the set. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the talent tree for Mistweaver Monk. Now, Mistweaver Monk has seen quite a few changes that has come to it over the course of the alpha and beta cycles of the War Within, to where it actually plays with some familiarity, but with some very stark differences. And a lot of those differences are found throughout the talent tree. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through this. Now, the quick overview is that we are not going to discuss hero talents. Obviously, they're not unlocked yet. And I'm going to go more into a deep dive on hero talents as we get to level 80 guides, which I will be doing around the time of raid. And we love this bug that happens where every time someone logs on, we get a new achievement. So in this video, I'm going to go through, we're going to talk about every talent in the trees and kind of talk about, how useful are they niche, are they mandatory, are they just good for pathing, are they flavor picks, personal preference, that sort of thing. Now, this guide, much like the entire Brewmaster class, as well as what we're doing so far in the Mistweaver class, is designed for beginners. If you have never played Mistweaver Monk, or you are new to Mistweaver Monk, and you want to learn how this class functions and how this class operates, that's the point of this series. So definitely be on the lookout for that. All right, so let's dive right into the class tree. We're going to start with the fact that they get paralysis and rising sun kick baseline. So rising sun kick definitely does just a straight up damage, has a 10-second cooldown, does good damage. It's an important part of your kit, as you can see. It applies renewing mist to a second ally within 40 yards. It's because of some talents over here. But this is talent granted you specialization for free and can't be unlearned. So very, very good talent. We also get paralysis, which is our incapacitate, as we've talked about. It's a single target CC effect. They can also do a soothe effect with the talent later on down the tree, which means soothing mist, which used to be baseline as the talent that you couldn't unlearn as Mistweaver, but now you get the choice of it. In this particular ability, as you can see, I don't currently have it selected. So what Soothing Mist does is it channels a heal into your target over a certain amount of time. And then while you're channeling, you can Enveloping Mist or Vivify a target instantly. And then each heal has a chance to proc your mastery. So with this particular ability, it's actually very good for sustained single target healing. But I don't think it's mandatory to grab, because depending on your setup or your comfortability with it, you don't always have to focus on sustained single target healing. A lot of people will still take this just because it's been in the kit for a long time, and there are talent points like in this talent setup that you can flex to. So I would say this isn't necessarily a mandatory pick, but it is a pick that you can flex to very, very easily. Elusive Mist, though, I would generally avoid, even if you take Soothing Mist. Reducing all damage taken by you and your target while channeling by 6%, so you're talking a 6% DR for 7 seconds. That also causes you to have to spam into the target and stuff like that. This talent is really good in theory. I think it's very good in PvP, but it is not necessarily that great for PvE, and that's the focus of these videos. Tiger's Lust, we talked a little bit about the spells and ability section. A fantastic ability. I think this is a mandatory pick, your first mandatory pick talent here. Giving you a movement speed for 6 seconds, remove roots and snares on yourself or a friendly target. It is very good self-utility, it is very good group utility or party utility, just very, very useful overall. We get our first choice noid, Crashing Momentum. Targets that you roll through are snared by 40% for 5 seconds. This is going to have very niche uses on it, because it's going to entirely depend in really Mythic Plus scenarios on what's going on with the dungeon. Now, with things like Sanguine no longer being a factor, there might be some more generic use cases that you have for this talent, but overall I think it's something that you can safely skip unless there's like a very specific scenario where it is going to be very good. Disable reduces the target's movement speed by 15% for 15 seconds, reduced by your melee attacks. PvP talent, really, I think, against potentially some very niche uses in Mythic Plus, but nothing that I've seen in any of the 8 dungeons on beta that we're getting for Season 1, so I think this choice node right here is a very safe, skippable pick. Fast Feet, Rising Sun Kick deals 70% increased damage, and Spinning Crane Kick deals 10% additional damage. This is another mandatory pick. I think this, I mean, it's a bunch of damage. Like, even for Mistweaver Monk, some additional damage is good because of interactions with it, other interactions that you have within your kit. Right. Grace of the Crane increases all healing taken by 4%. I think this is a mandatory pick because it's just, you need, right now we're spent 3 points in this tree, so you need it to get down the path, and this is one of the best nodes to get. A little extra healing on yourself when you're casting a Renewing Mist on yourself or a Vivify on yourself, never a bad thing. Bounding Agility, getting Roll and Chi Torpedo traveling small distances further. I think this is a flex pick. You can use it to fill out your 8 points if you need it. And I think there is some value here at the top part of this tree, which comes down through the row 4 section, that you could take it. But right now, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like, you get 9 points really right now in the top of your tree. You could easily skip this if you really wanted to, but anytime you can make your mobility a little bit more mobile, I think it's a pretty good pick. I'm going to say it's not mandatory, but it is one that you should strongly consider. Calming Presence, reduce all damage taken by 6%. Mandatory. I don't think I need to explain why. Wind's Reach, this is plays off of the choice node. Since you're skipping the choice node, I don't think you really get a lot of value of this with the extra range or Crashing Momentum's duration. Even in like PvP builds, I think there is some value in Disable being in an extra 5 yards, but for PvE, because you're skipping that choice node, you skip this talent in all scenarios. Improved Detox, giving you poison and disease effects on top of magic effects. So a very, very good node here. I'm going to say this is a mandatory pick because Dispel for healers is very powerful. So that puts us at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Vivacious Vivification. Every 10 seconds, your next Vivify becomes instant and gets a 20% boost to its healing. I think for Mistweaver Monk, this is actually a mandatory pick because you Vivify a lot in both build setups, even if you run a Soothing Mist or a No Soothing Mist or an Ancient Teachings build. Like, you're running a lot of Vivify. And so getting one that's going to be instant versus its normal like 1.5 second cast is valuable. I mean, instead of taking an entire GCD to do it, you just get it for free, get that healing off much quicker. Jade Walk, while out of combat, you gain 15% movement speed. I think this is a flavor pick. You pick it if you really want to. I don't see a lot of use for it, because like, you're the healer. You're not going to be the, if you're the first one getting to the pack, you have to wait on your tank anyways. This is a pretty good leveling talent. I'd say if you're leveling up, definitely grab this talent because it just gives you that movement speed while you're traveling between packs. And this is going to be especially useful early in the expansion when we're all kind of clumped into, the areas together. So good leveling talent, potential good talent as a tank, as I've talked about. But for Mistweaver, I think you can skip it in almost any other scenario. Pressure Points. Paralysis removes all enrage effects from its target. This is a talent that I think for Mythic Plus, it's going to largely depend on, are there enrage effects in the dungeon? If so, this is a mandatory pick. If there is not, then you can use it to flesh out points in your tree, but other than that, it's kind of like a situational pick. Potentially to be very, very powerful when it's good. When there's not a lot of enrage or no enrage effects in a dungeon, you're wasted the point. Figure Strike is your kick. I think it's just good to have. You need to kind of fill out the points. And this is the point that you take to unlock this tree, the center section of the tree here for your next gate. So you got to pick one of these 3, and this is kind of the best of the 3 because you can use it to kick trash. Mobs like Primal Council and Vault of the Incarnates, where the boss had constant casts going off, and you had to kick as many of those as you could. Spearhand Strike will be useful because you can be jumped into that kick rotation. Good stuff. Puts us at 7 points. And then Ancient Arts reduces the cooldown of Paralysis by 15 seconds and the cooldown of Leg Sweep by 10 seconds. This is a point where I think this could also be something where you take 2 points out of this, but again, and you could maybe put like a point into Soothing Mist, and that would give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 points. Bounding agility can be skipped. So this is like a one that I just kind of use it to fill out the node, but you could easily pick a Soothing Mist talent, like take these 2 points out and take Soothing Mist here, and I think it would be perfectly fine, because you can see you're still getting down to this part of the tree. And then that leaves you a free talent point to go somewhere else in the tree. But for now, I'm just going to stick it there. So let's talk about your next node down. On the 5th row, we get Chi Wave. So every 15 seconds, your Rising Sun Kicker Vivify releases a Chi Wave. That does a little bit of damage or healing to a bunch of targets within, bounces in between targets. This is a very passive option, takes a button off your bars. It's not tuned to be the greatest right now, but if you're just looking to simplify the number of buttons that you have on your bars, this is a very decent way to go about doing it. Chi Burst, basically it's a very short, quick cast, 30-second cooldown, and basically does a bunch of damage and a bunch of healing to anything in the path. Chi Burst is not something that you're going to use rotationally for Mistweaver Monk, but it is got some kind of niche uses. Both of these talents really are to continue to open up paths down the tree, and Chi Burst you can at least gain a little bit of damage out of it, so it makes it the most valuable option. Transcendence we've talked a lot about in other videos. I've done whole videos on Transcendence tech. I will be doing that video series again come the War Within for dungeons and raids this time. But basically it gives you a way to really maximize your mobility, potentially cheese mechanics. I could talk about Transcendence for a long time. There's a lot of really good talents here. I think Transcendence is mandatory. Chi Burst mandatory. Energy Transfer, successfully interrupting an enemy reduces the cooldown of roll and paralysis. There are potential scenarios in Mythic Plus where this talent could be very powerful, where you'd pull a point out of like Soothing Mist and maybe throw it here into Energy Transfer. But like it's kind of hard to justify the point. Like you could maybe take out Bounding Agility to grab it as well. So there's ways to get it, but it's a little expensive in terms of your talent point economy. But it's a good talent. Like if you have a situation where you need more paralysis, you need more roll, this is the absolute best way to do it. Celerity gives you a reduction of the cooldown of roll to 5 seconds, so it makes it, I believe, 15 instead of 20, and you get 3 charges instead of 2. This is a very, very powerful talent. This is a very good default baseline to use, so I definitely would recommend taking it in almost every scenario. That said, if you are a Chi Torpedo lover, nothing wrong with taking it. I actually believe that Chi Torpedo is interesting. It does have a much longer movement distance, and you get the movement speed afterwards. You just have to be very careful with where you Chi Torpedo, because on certain platforms it does Chi Torpedo you off the side. I absolutely Chi Torpedoed off of like the Painsmith platform in Sanctum of Domination back in Shadowlands, for example. I've Chi Torpedoed off the legend Ruby Life Pools for the last boss. Yes, I've done that. So there's definitely ways that it can kind of mess with you, so you have to be mindful. But I mean, if you're a Chi Torpedo lover, take it. If you really enjoy the way the ability looks and feels for you, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you if you take it over Celerity. It's a complete personal preference pick, but I think either one of these is very impactful. There are some people that will say that will take it away and not use it in order to gain some other utility in the tree, but I like the mobility it provides. I say it's mandatory, but you could very much argue that it is very valuable, but not mandatory. All right, quick-footed or hasty propagation. Basically, you get reduction in snare effects, or targets move faster when you taunt. You're not taunting a lot, so that talent is not very useful. You are not getting snare effects. This could be nichely useful depending on the dungeons. It entirely depends on the situation there. So I'd say niche, with hasty propagation being a skip. Ferocity of Juen, increased damage dealt. Mandatory pick, don't think I need to say why. Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace is, and then Song of Chi-Ji. Song of Chi-Ji I think you could safely skip. Like there are some very specific scenarios where it's really good, but Ring of Peace is just so universally powerful that I think of the two, you always just kind of pick Ring of Peace. Ring of Peace will always have its value in dungeons. In raid scenarios, it's going to be very, very specific to fight or really just for trash. But you do need to fill some points here in this bottom part of the tree, and I think this is one of the better ones to get it with, because there's some other talent points that just aren't useful. Spirit Essence, getting a snare on your Transcendence when you transfer. I don't see a lot of value in this so much with Mythic Plus, really, even, and then in and then for like raid scenarios, you're just never really going to see value because you can't snare bosses. Dagger Tail Sweep increases the range of leg sweep by 4 yards. Very good for Mythic Plus. You kind of use it as a point filler for raid. This is where something like this is why you see people taking like Bounding Agility for raid builds, because there's a lot of stuff in the middle of this tree. This is not the greatest for raid, but this is kind of one of the least offensive for raid. So again, Mythic Plus builds, I think it's mandatory, but for raid builds, it's like if you can find a point somewhere else to take, you can take it. Improved Touch of Death. Now it can be used on targets less than 15% health and deals 35% of your maximum health in damage. DPS increase. Even for Mistweaver Monk in raid situations and Mythic Plus situations, it's a DPS increase. Strongly recommend. I'll say even mandatory. Vigorous Expulsion. Expel Harm's healing is increased by 5% and critical strike chance increased by 15%. This talent is kind of just here because the talent that it connects to here, to Save Them All, is very good. So you kind of take this just because it connects to a better talent. Expel Harm has like some decent use for Mistweaver, mostly as a self-heal. But this isn't going to be game breaking. It's not going to make the ability like broken or anything like that. You kind of take it because you need the point and Save Them All. Diffuse Magic or Yu'lon's Grace. Yu'lon's Grace basically gives you an Absorb Shield, stacking up to 15%. That allows you to or Magic Absorb Shield specifically. So very good for raid situations because you're kind of having this constant, consistent absorb that's coming through. Diffuse Magic though, very powerful, can remove dots or debuffs on you. I'm sure someone will make the list soon of all the diffusable debuffs in the War Within. In raid situations, it's very, very niche. I wouldn't really go chase it too much. I think that's where Yu'lon's Grace is better, but in Mythic Plus, Diffuse Magic is very, very good. Either way, this node is mandatory. It's just which node you are going to choose will depend on what content you're doing. Peace and Prosperity. Ring of Peace, cooldown reduced by 5 seconds. This is something I think for Mythic Plus there's some value here if you don't find other points that are better, but this is one that's like situationally useful. You kind of use it as a point filler if you need it. Fort Brew, this is your big defensive cooldown, mandatory pick. That's all I'm going to say about it. Dance of the Wind, I think is 100% a skip talent for Mistweaver Monk because you don't dodge a ton. So this is not going to see a ton of value. Alright, next row, Save Them All. This is what I mentioned earlier. It's very powerful. When your healing spells heal an ally whose health is below 35%, you gain an additional 10% healing for the next 4 seconds. So it's a very good way to help stabilize a group. This is where you see, like, I've done playing around where I'll heal somebody below 35% and then Shield's gift them. And it just is like a massive, massive heal. So this is a very, very good talent. I think for Mistweaver, it's mandatory in all situations. Swift Art. Roll removes the snare effect once every 30 seconds. I think this one is a PvP talent. Really, it's not doesn't have really a ton of use. It just kind of depends on snare effect. Something like Entangled, this would have been excellent, but with Entangled going by the retirement home route for Mythic Plus affix, this talent loses a ton of value. Next choice node, you get Profound Rebuttal. Critical healing on Expel Harm, or giving it more healing based on your missing health. Strength of Spirit, I think, is just really good. Again, Expel Harm is not something that you're going to use to save someone else's life, but it can save your own. And so making that more powerful based on how much health you're missing is just good. It's just good. I'm going to say this is a mandatory pick. I think it's really, really powerful. Alright. Summon Jade Serpent Statue. This is the statue for Mistweaver Monk. There are some builds where this can be very, very good. If you're running a heavy emphasis of Soothing Mist, then grabbing Jade Serpent Statue is not a bad idea at all. There are talent points that you can flex to make that happen. So it's kind of build dependent, and I would say even really it's fight dependent. So it's kind of like a talent that, like, if you can utilize it effectively, it's going to be very, very good. If you don't get a lot of good effect out of it, skip this. Alright. Expeditious Fortification, get a 30-second reduction in your Fort Brew, which is a minute and a half, 2-minute cooldown baseline, so that's always good. But you can take Iron Shell Brew, which basically gives you an extra 10% damage reduction and a little bit of health increase. I think both of these are fine. It's, do you want your brew more often, or do you want it more powerful? Either way, I think this is a very good pick. I won't call it mandatory. Actually, no, I'm going to call it mandatory. You just kind of pick whichever one you want. Celestial Determination, you can skip. You know, yes, you can get to it through Improved Touch of Death, so you have a path to it, but it's just not very good. Chi Proficiency, magical damage and healing increased by 4%. Obviously, they increase to your healing on top of increased healing to yourself here through Grace to the Crane. Very, very good talent. Wish it wasn't so expensive at 2 points, but they've got to do some point economy in this tree somewhere. This is easily a good place to do it. Healing Winds, Transcendence heals you for 15% of your maximum health. This is a situational pick. If you can find a way where Transcendence is going to be able to be used often enough to give you the heal, then I absolutely would say take this. But it's not something that that's going to be mandatory on every fight. You kind of just pick a time where it might be valuable and go from there. Windwalking gives you and your allies 4% movement speed within 10 yards of you. This is kind of like a good flavor, take it if you want it pick. There are other talents in the bottom part of this tree or even higher up into the tree that you can take that are probably better. But anytime you can get some extra movement speed even for yourself is never a totally bad thing, and this is much more accessible to get than what it was in the previous form of this tree. So I would say this is one where it's like, if you want it, you can take it, but if there's other talents that you like more, you can easily take a point out of this to take that talent that you like more. This is very much a flex pick. Bounce Back. When you take 12% of your damage, 12% of your maximum HP in damage, you reduce all damage you take by 40% for 6 seconds, once every 30 seconds. This is a pretty safe defensive talent pick for a spec that, believe it or not, does have some ability to get absolutely crushed. Mistweaver Monk lost a lot of the defensive kit that it had because Dampen Harm in particular went away, and Healing Elixir took a small nerf. But it is still, I think, a good talent to have, because anytime you can help yourself live while you're getting everyone else caught up, not a bad thing. Martial Instincts gives you 4% avoidance, 4% physical damage. All the damage you do as a Mistweaver Monk through the fist weaving builds is physical, so yeah, mandatory. Lighter Than Air basically gives you an ability to have a small dash after you roll. I'll show this off here for those that did not watch the Brewmaster video. Basically what it does is when you roll, you can jump, and boom, little dash. So roll, boom, dash. So just a little way to have a little bit of extra mobility. This is very much a personal preference pick. If you like it, you can take it. If you don't like it, you can easily move this around for something else, like grabbing Summon Jade Serpent Statue or Piece of Prosperity in a Mythic Plus build. There's options there. Flow of Chi. You gain a bonus effect depending on what your current health is, either extra movement speed, an extra DR, or extra healing received. This is kind of a pick that I think is just a safe, consistent pick, because all of these are useful for you as a Mistweaver Monk. So you can easily take any of these talents, and I think you're going to be in a pretty good spot in order to take advantage of these talents. So this is just like a good pick. I won't say it's mandatory because you can easily skip it and go from there, but okay. Alright, Escape from Reality basically allows you to transcend it twice. Very situational. If there's a build time where this is going to be a very nice pick to have, then I would absolutely say grab it. But it's going to be very fight dependent and encounter dependent. Transcendence the Experience basically turns Transcendence into the Ancient Wernstone, which is an evoker ability that allows a player to teleport to the evoker. This is kind of working in the reverse. You mark a target and you can Transcendence to that target. So if you need a place where you need to stack up, there's definitely some fights in like Emir Drasil that I could think of that this would be very useful. But, you know, it's fight dependent. Fatal Touch basically makes it so that you do more damage for 5% for 30 seconds after being cast, and reduces its cooldown significantly. In raid builds, I don't see this having a ton of value, because usually the last few percent you're trying to make sure, as your group maybe starting to attrition out and health bars are consistently staying, you know, medium to low, that you're not going to get a ton of value out of the extra damage. So in raid builds you can skip this. In Mythic Plus builds, there's some people that do take them. I think it's kind of a situational one. If you really like it or you think you can maximize its effectiveness, then go for it, but it's also one that you can skip. Rushing Reflexes. When you roll to an enemy, it lunges to an enemy near you. Generally speaking, you don't want to be right on top of enemies, so this you can safely pick, and Clash is kind of shit for Mistweaver. I think it's a shit ability overall, but it's kind of shit for Mistweaver. Skip this node. So that's the class tree. Lots of mandatory picks. I think I've got most of the mandatory stuff here. This is my raid build. Mythic Plus build basically switches out a few points to grab things like pressure points if it's going to be valuable, and grab something like potentially Jade Walk, but you know, you kind of see it. This build right here is kind of universal. Like I said, there's some flex points around Wind Walking, Lighter Than Air, Flow of Chi, Soothing Mist, a second point in Ancient Arch you can use for like Mythic Plus builds. Grabbing something like Energy Transfer could be useful, Pressure Points can be useful, even like Peace and Prosperity for Mythic Plus builds, also useful here. Right. So very good. I really like the Monk class tree. I said it in the Brewmaster video, it's the same here. I like this tree. You get some really nice options where you get kind of everything you want with about 22 to 25 talent points, and then that leaves you with like 5 or 6 points that you can just kind of pick things that you think are neat. And that's how, to me, all spec trees should be. Let's move on to the class tree. Enveloping Mist, right there with Renewing Mist and Vivify as kind of your main core 3 healing abilities. Basically, it puts hot on the target, has them take extra healing. It's a good ability. It's very mana inefficient, so you don't want to spam it out a ton, but it does have a lot of value in your kit. Thunder Focus Tea, basically what this does is it empowers your next spell. It's on a 30-second cooldown, you use it a ton. So Enveloping Mist makes it, which is this ability here, basically makes it cast instantly and does an upfront heal. Renewing Mist gives it a longer duration. Vivify has no mana cost. Rising Sun Kick has a 9-second cooldown reduction. This is a 10-second baseline cooldown at my haste, so basically I can use it, hit another global, and use it again. Very, very powerful to do that if you're looking to maximize your damage. And Expel Harm basically gives you a small absorb. It's a very powerful ability. You're going to use it a lot. Renewing Mist. This is your main hot and what a lot of the kit of Mistweaver Monk is kind of charged around. So Renewing Mist is, I'd say, put it in like your most comfortable keybind because you're going to be using this a ton. Does healing over time, and then also has smart healing. So if your target is at maximum health, but then like the Warlock doesn't turn off their Burning Rush, it'll jump to the Warlock so that, you know, if they're close enough, so that the Warlock gets that healing bonus from it. It also allows you to enable your Vivify cleave healing. So every target that you get a Renewing Mist on, Vivify will heal all targets with Renewing Mist for, I think it's like 30% of the healing that the Vivify does on your main target. So it's a really good way to have cleave healing. It's a really good way to do good AoE healing. It just enables a lot in the kit. So it's a very, very powerful ability. Obviously, these top 3 mandatory. Life Cocoon is your tank external, as it's called, or your external cooldown. Puts a big ass absorb shield on something, puts, you know, with a talent below it here that you can grab here. Yeah, it's somewhere in here, but basically, like, you can put a big ass absorb shield on it. It does put Renewing Mists and Enveloping Mist on the target as well. It's just like a good oh shit button, save somebody in your party. Mana Tea. This is your mana efficiency. So Mana Tea is interesting. So basically you gain a stack of Mana Tea, and then you can sit there and drink it for a while. We talked about this in the spells and abilities section, but I'm going to go over it again. So basically you get, for however long you drink Mana Tea, you can get mana reduction per second that you drank for doing this. So there's a lot of different ways to effectively use Mana Tea. You can Mana Tea and then hit like Revival, which obviously has almost 11,000 mana cost. You can Mana Tea and hit a few Enveloping Mists, which will reduce the mana cost. You can Mana Tea and hit your Celestial, which has 12,500 mana. Like, lots of different ways to use Mana Tea to make you even more efficient. This is also very good at just restoring mana between packs. So if you have a tank that's just like, hey, I'm going to chain pull, Blood DKs want to do that, for example, to keep Bone Shield uptime, and you're sitting at like 50% mana, you can just Mana Tea and you're going to get a big chunk of that mana back. Very, very good for your efficiency. You definitely want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on it, and you want to make sure that you're chugging it anytime you need the mana, or even if you just need the cooldown or the mana cost reduction. I've had many cases where I know that like my Revival is going to be used in a raid situation. I'll Mana Tea for like 3 seconds before that, so that Revival is 30% less, and that's, you know, going to be like 3,300 mana off. So we're talking a 7,500 mana raid cooldown versus a 11,000 mana raid cooldown. Just really, really efficient stuff. It's a very fun ability, very fun to min-max. Healing Elixir. This is a passive. Basically, when you drop below 40% health, you gain, you drink an elixir that instantly heals you for 20% of maximum health, and you get 2 charges of these every, you know, one coming every 30 seconds. You don't have to think about this at all, really. You just know when you drop low, you're going to probably hear the sound cue of you drinking your tea, and or drinking your elixir rather, and that's when you know you're gonna get that healing back. All of these picks right here, mandatory. Crane Style, Rising Sun Kick now grants up a gust of mist to heal 2 allies for an amount, and then Blackout Kick and Spinning Crane Kick have a chance to make this better. So this is involved in both raid builds and Mythic Plus builds. It's a mandatory pick in my opinion, because you're using a lot of Rising Sun Kick even in your raid build where you're not necessarily relying on Ancient Teachings healing, but throwing another talent at the capstone level is still very valuable to make sure that you're Rising Sun Kicking as often as possible. And the Spinning Crane Kick, Blackout Kick has more use in Mythic Plus situations, but still very, very good. This is a mandatory pick. It just allows you to get a little extra healing even while you're doing damage. It's just a really nice pick. Revival is your big raid cooldown. Restore basically makes it so you can cast it while stunned and doesn't remove magic effects, so it's more of the PvP side of things. Revival is the one that you want to use for raid and Mythic Plus scenarios. Big old chunk of healing. It's a Mass Dispel on top of that with a 3-minute cooldown. It's not as good as Mass Dispel is for the dispel purposes, but it obviously does healing, which Mass Dispel does not, which kind of justifies that longer cooldown. Excellent raid cooldown. Definitely want to make sure that you're using it, or just really excellent cooldown in period. So you definitely want to make sure that you're using it when generally it's assigned in raid situations. In Mythic Plus scenarios, if your whole party's starting to bleed out and you're falling behind, this is a good way to buy yourself some time to catch up. Invigorating Mist. This is where you get your Vivify Cleave. So Vivify heals all allies with your renewing mist active for, this is obviously it's a percentage amount based on your intellect, with reduced beyond 5 allies, because with 3 charges of renewing mist you can get quite a few of them out. So very, very powerful talent, mandatory pick. Nourishing Chi, basically it does even more healing, and you get more periodic healing and stuff like that. I've never been a big fan of Nourishing Chi. I've always liked Calm and Coalescence a little bit better, particularly for raid and Mythic Plus scenarios. But right now, because there's so many other really good talents, I think in both builds you're kind of skipping this. I'll just have to check my Mythic Plus build here in a minute. Uplifted Spirits, Vivify Crit Strikes and Rising Sun Kick reduce the remaining cooldown of Revival, and Revival heals targets for 15% of the initial heal over 10 seconds. So it gives Revival CDR options, and it gives you a hot on Revival's heal, which is excellent. Very, very good talent. I'm going to recommend it in all situations. Here we have our first choice node. Mana Tea now channels 50% faster and generates 20% more mana. There is definitely builds where you can pick this, and I think it's going to be very, very valuable. I think there are some raid builds actually where you can take this. I think there's even some Mythic Plus builds where this is going to be useful as well, where you kind of always have a charge of Mana Tea going, so you kind of can always manipulate it and use it. I don't think it's as good as Life Cycles, basically, which makes your Mana Tea generation even faster, so that you have Mana Tea at max stacks more often. I think really you can pick either one of these, and it's generally going to be okay. If you want your Mana Tea to be better when you drink it, take Energizing Brew. If you want to be able to drink your Mana Tea more often, take Life Cycles. Zen Pulse. This used to be a damage thing, now it's a healing thing. Renewing Mist heal over time has a chance to cause your next Vivify to also trigger Zen Pulse on its target, and all allies with Renewing Mist, healing them for an amount increased by 6% per up to Renewing Mist active up to 30%. So basically this is a talent that basically says, hey, you get Renewing Mist, you're rewarded for spreading out Renewing Mist and keeping out as many as you can. Because then you're going to get obviously your Vivify Cleave, but then this also will trigger on a target. So it's just adds to your cleave healing, adds to your group healing. Very, very good. They actually made a indicator that goes right here. It looks like a green leaf. That's letting you know when you have a Zen Pulse that is triggering. Alright, let's move down to Mist of Life. Basically, this is what makes Life Cocoon adding the 2 hots to the target. Raid builds, you kind of skip this, but in Mythic Plus builds, I think it's really, really valuable to have. Overflowing Mist, basically, Enveloping Mist heals the target for percentage of their health each time they take damage. It's a very small number. It's just not tuned well, which is why we don't take it, but I really love the idea. Alright, Celestials. So Celestials, I kind of talked about this in the spells and abilities section. There's a whole video that I'm going to link to from Megaset that is going to do this, but basically, which Celestial do you use? Yulon you want to use in pretty much all raid situations because you can have what's called a Yulon ramp window that gives very powerful spread healing and cleave healing. Chi-Ji is best for Mythic Plus situations because it takes the idea of damage to healing conversion and cranks it up. Definitely take, again, mandatory picks. You're going to want to pick one of these in all situations. It's an excellent cooldown for yourself. Which one is going to depend on the content that you're doing. Deep Clarity. After you fully consume Thunder Focus Tea, your next Vivify triggers Zen Pulse. So this is just going to make sure that you always have that Zen Pulse going. So the idea basically with this is you want to spread out your Renewing Mists, Thunder Focus Tea, and then you can, Thunder Focus Tea, which then also gives you a no mana cost Vivify. It's going to trigger a bunch of cleave healing. So very powerful use cases behind it. Rapid Diffusion. Basically, Rising Sun Kick and Enveloping Mist give you more Renewing Mist spread. It's only for 6 seconds, so it's a very short duration, but more Renewing Mist out means you have more chances to be able to have that cleave healing and that spread healing. Very, very good talent. Use it all the time. Chrysalis, reducing the cooldown of Life Cocoon by 45 seconds. Very good in Mythic Plus, not so much in Raid. And Burst of Life basically makes it so that when the shield expires, it releases healing. This has never been really all that good. It takes a lot. I feel like you have to be clumped up. So there's some potential cases for it, but more Life Cocoons is better than this. Yulon's Whisper. While channeling Manatee, you exhale the breath of Yulon. Basically, it just heals allies every 0.4 seconds, but it's a very small number. It's just not tuned very well. Mist Trap. Increase Enveloping Mist's duration by 1 second and its healing bonus by 10%. Just a very good, safe pick. And you need the talent points to fill out the tree in the middle, so this is a pretty good one to have. That said, Refreshing Jade Wind could potentially have some use if you have a heavy melee comp or using a melee heavy group in Mythic Plus. There actually could be value here when you Thunder Focus Tea to trigger your Zen Pulses, or to do a long Renewing Mists, or even to get a very powerful Rising Sun Kick CDR. Refreshing Jade Wind is going to be good. It just requires you to make sure that you're basically using Thunder Focus Tea almost on cooldown. Like, you want to use it definitely in every pack. So this is choice node. Both are good. It's just a lot of it's just a numbers tuning thing, really. Celestial Harmony basically targets with Enveloping Breath. So basically, when you use your Enveloping Mist, you're going to trigger an extra hot on everyone else, which is good because it increases the healing they take from you. And then when activated, it applies Chi Cocoons to a bunch of targets, which makes it a very powerful raid CDR thing, because you're getting, it doesn't seem like 225,000 absorbs is not big, but it's significant when you're talking 5 targets getting a 225,000 absorb. That's over 1 million damage that's being absorbed right there. Dancing Mists. Renewing Mist basically can spread when it travels. Very, very good for raid builds. Less impactful for Mythic Plus builds, but very, very good for raid builds. Lotus Infusion. Allies with the Renewing Mist receive 8% more healing and increases Renewing Mist duration by 2% seconds. This is a very, very good raid talent. But the other talent here, Chi Harmony, which is our old Season 3, Season 4 Dragonflight set bonus, basically makes it so that your targets basically get a big jump of healing when they get Renewing Mists. So this allows you to basically makes it so that if you have to turbo heal a target, Chi Harmony is going to give you an extra powerful window to do that. Lotus Infusion is really good for raid builds because anytime you can get as many Renewing Mists out, again, we're talking this gameplay loop. Invigorating Mist, Zen Pulse, things that trigger off of having Renewing Mist on your target. This just allows for more than that. Jadefire Stomp is the old Shadowlands Covenant ability, renamed and reskinned. It's very good for Mythic Plus abilities. Basically, it puts a stomp on the ground, activates your ancient teachings buff. In raid builds, it's not very good, but in Mythic Plus builds, you can get a lot of value out of it. Peer into Peace. 5% of your overhealing done onto targets with Soothing Mist is spread to near 3 by neighboring allies. This has synergies with Soothing Mist. A lot of people don't play a ton of Soothing Mist. Like I said, a lot of builds don't even take Soothing Mist at all, which makes this talent 100% skippable. Also, Pool of Mist is just good. Gives you that third Renewing Mist charge that you really want, and reduces the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick by an additional second. And then Rising Sun Kick also reduces the cooldown of Renewing Mist. So there's a very, very powerful synergy here. Rising Sun Kick allowing you to spread more Renewing Mist allows you to Rising Sun Kick more, which has other gameplay loops. This talent is powerful and use it in all situations. Jade Bond basically makes it so that you can get some CDR on your Celestial and gives it a bigger soothing breath when you do your Gust of Mist healing. This was a very good conduit back in Shadowlands, but it's really not that good now, mainly because Gift of the Celestials is very good. Basically makes it so that you have 1 minute Celestials, but a shortened duration. So by default, they have 24-second durations. This will cut it in half, but also makes it so that you have a 1 minute Celestial right now, which is just insane to have. Gift of the Celestials, extremely powerful. Focus Thunder, it gives you 2 spells that Focus Thunder empowers. I know a lot of PvPers will take this. PvE situations, it's not very good. Sheelan's Gift. This is the old artifact weapon ability that has come back. Basically, this draws in nearby clouds of mist that will generate while you're in combat. And then basically, depending on how many clouds you absorb, it does a bunch of big healing. This is a very, very good ability. You don't use it on cooldown, obviously, because... or you don't use it all the time, rather. You want to let it build up a little bit. But it's a really good way to... well, in raid situations, you use it for a different circumstance. In Mythic Plus situations, it can almost be a group lay on hands. It is wildly powerful. Ancient Concordance. This strikes off of Jadefire Stomp. So basically, when you have Jadefire Stomp down, your Blackout Kick strikes 3 additional targets and gives you an increased chance to reset Rising Sun Kick, which has a lot of good interplay. If you're running a Jadefire Stomp build, there's a good chance you're running Ancient Concordance. There's just a lot of good synergy with it. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Awaken Jadefire, which basically makes it reset more often. And gives you a little bit of, makes your Tiger Palm strike twice, which stacks up your Teachings of the Monastery buff, and Spinning Crane Kick kills nearby allies. So it just makes it like very good for you to go like full damage to healing conversion. Dance of GG is a proc that basically makes it so that your Spinning Crane Kick deals an additional damage, and it's basically free to use. Very niche setups here. Mythic Plus builds, obviously, there's some very powerful implications there if you can sacrifice the healing output that you lose by getting it. Raid builds, almost no value. Let's talk about Ancient Teachings. Ancient Teachings, basically, when you cast Feline Stomp, your Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, and Rising Sun Kick will basically heal for a bunch of allies split evenly. And then while Ancient Teachings is active, you gain extra stamina. Ancient Teachings is very powerful for Mythic Plus builds. It's one of the main ways that you actually heal in Mythic Plus builds overall. So very, very powerful. There are some raid builds that are being theorized right now that will actually run a Jadefire Ancient Teachings build, and you sacrifice things like Misty Peaks, or even come like Invoker's Delight to come grab these 2 talents in particular. But I don't think right now, based on the raid testing that we've done so far, that it's really worth the squeeze at the moment. Makes me a little sad. I love Ancient Teachings. It's the whole reason I play Mistweaver Monk, but raid builds right now, it's not very, but Mythic Plus builds, 1000% you're taking this. Resplendent Mist basically is a chance to make your mastery do a little bit more mastery. This is kind of a weak ass talent, you could skip it. Secret Infusion, when you use Thunder Focus Tea, so not only do you get your benefits off of what it does for your individual spells, but depending on which spell you use, you gain 15% of a stat. So a lot of people are going to grab things like Renewing Mist because it always gives you that haste. But even grabbing the versatility of like Rising Sun Kick is good when you're trying to maximize your damage, because the only way you gain damage increases is through crit and versatility. So pretty good talent to take. I've seen some people not use it in certain builds, but for beginners, I think this is a pretty safe pick to take. Misty Peaks. Basically, when you Renewing Mist, every time it ticks, it has a small chance to apply an Enveloping Mist for 2 seconds, which gives you just a small little bit of tick of healing. Very good for raid builds, but very, very skippable for Mythic Plus builds. Peaceful Mending. Skip it. This is not very good. It's not tuned very well. Veil of Pride. So this basically makes it so that your mist generation, instead of every 8 seconds, is every 4 seconds. Very good for Mythic Plus, because that means you can get more Sheelan's Gifts off, which is never a bad thing. That at higher stacks, never a bad thing. Shao Lessons. This is good for raid builds. This is not something that you necessarily think about too much. If you're an experienced Mistweaver Monk, you do things to maximize this. For beginners, though, just know that you're getting like this nice little buff every time you use Sheelan's Gift, and it just does something for you that's gonna be nice. Again, if you're an experienced player, you do things to min-max it, but if you're a beginner, this is just a good talent pick for raid builds, because it just makes all your stuff a little bit better. All right, we talked about these two talents, so we're going to come down here to Tea of Serenity. Basically makes it so that Thunder Focus Tea also empowers 2 additional Renewing Mist, Enveloping Mist, or Vivify at random. RNG nature of this makes it hard to be reliable, and with healers, you want something that is always going to make you reliable. Tea of Plenty. Thunder Focus Tea empowers different spells at random. Unison. Soothing Mist. Again, if you're not using Soothing Mist, skip it. Here, each time Enveloping Mist heals, there's a chance that it'll have a chance to spread. This talent is just not very good considering what else you can get. Invoker's Delight. 20% haste for 8 seconds after summoning your Celestial. Very good. Mistweaver loves haste. Alright, Tear of Mourning. This is an old Shadowlands legendary that has been in this tree, and unfortunately it shares a choice node with one of the best talents in the tree. Basically, this makes it so that when you cast Vivify and Enveloping Mist on a target with Renewing Mist, it has a chance to spread that Renewing Mist, and then your Vivify healing is increased, and your Enveloping Mist also heals allies with Renewing Mist for 12% of its healing. Basically, it makes it so that your spread healing is very, very powerful. Unfortunately, it shares a choice node with Rising Mist, which is one of the best talents in this tree. Basically, when you Rising Sun Kick, it heals all the allies with your hots on them, and extends those hots by up to 4 seconds to 100% of their original duration. So here, it's got a 7-second duration, so it makes it a 14-second one. Renewing Mist has 20-second duration. You're talking a 40-second duration. And with Thunder Focus Tea, you can get a Renewing Mist that sits out there for a minute. So Rising Mist, extremely powerful. Legacy of Wisdom basically makes it so Healing Gifts heals 2 targets and reduces its cast time. Raid builds, you skip this, but in Mythic Plus builds, you do take this. So there's some very, very powerful talents in this tree. The Mistweaver tree is kind of spoiled for choice. Like your Raid builds and your Mythic Plus builds are going to look very, very different to each other. So you can see this is kind of like my Raid build that I've kind of been messing around with a little bit. In the Mythic Plus build, you can see like a ton of talents change. So yeah, it's just like you get some very divergent playstyles with your Raid build versus your Mythic Plus build. So that's kind of the talent tree here. Like I said, a lot of mandatory picks, but a lot of talents that you can kind of flex to. The Mistweaver Spec tree just has a ton of really good talents, but the content that you're doing determines which ones you play, which is why I think the tree actually works pretty well right now. You're kind of spoiled for choice in a lot of ways. Anyways, this has been a long ass video, so I'm going to cut it off here. Congratulations, class. Thank you for staying for a little extra time past the bell. Until the next video, hope you all stay safe, hope you enjoy yourself, you're having fun, you keep on gaming, and I'll see you in class 203, Mistweaver Healing Priority and Tips and Tricks.